Hello there. Welcome to this lecture, which is on a historical perspective on urban floods in Tanzania, the case of Dar es Salaam. In this lecture, I'm going to give you the history of flooding and also to suggest the best way on how to reduce the risk of floods in Tanzania and the best ways in which by using the historical perspective you can manage flooding events. Probably we should start with the question, why do we have floods in urban areas in Tanzania and other places in the world? So in the literature and in the academic discourses, we have three narratives. One is that we have climate change, so floods are because of the climate change effects. And second is that we're having floods because of natural forces. So here some may say we have submergence of lands, of lowlands. We have sea level rise, and we have tsunamis that are facing different coastal areas. And others, which is we are subscribing to the third category of factors on why we have floods in the world, and that is on the rapid pace of urbanization. So climate change, natural forces, and rapid pace of urbanization have been identified as the key factors as why we have floods in the world. Now, in my lecture, the argument is, if you look at those factors, history as an academic discipline is invariably ignored in providing an understanding of flood risk and disasters in the world. So Dar es Salaam is becoming one of those places which are exhibiting how those policies and understanding of floods are unsustainable, because for a century and 3 decades, and here we're talking of 130 years, we have had flooding history here in Dar es Salaam. So if history was not ignored, then probably these floods could have been reduced, they could have been mitigated, they could have been urban resilience for a long time. So the persistence of floods here in Dar es Salaam has had a serious impact on human lives, on human property, on infrastructure. And in this lecture, I illustrate therefore, by using the case of Dar es Salaam, why history matters in flood risk reduction and management. And I use this lecture to complement other lectures which have been produced by specialists from other disciplines. By then, Dar es Salaam was under the German colonial rule. Mind you, Dar es Salaam has passed through 3 phases. First, it has passed through the German colonial rule, and then from between 1890 and 1918, and then it passed through the British colonial rule from 1919 to 1961. And then from 1961 to the present, it is in the post-colony. So, during the British colonial period, newspapers were there, and one of the newspapers was Tanganyika Standard, and it recorded the center of the city of Dar es Salaam. Here is an excerpt that I would like to read for you from the Tanganyika Standard of 24th March 1930. It read, "The showers of the past week left 1/4 of the town bright and fresh and gladdened by the beauty of the rain. Just about a mile away along the seafront, in the vicinity of the General Post Office and in what is regarded as the commercial area, the waters lay dark and deep. Pedestrians had to paddle through the mud to reach the heart of the commercial activity, which is the post office. Motor cars ploughed through the mud and water into potholes, spread the dirty water over those who had to walk," and here it means the pedestrians. In any other town of the size of Dar es Salaam, the municipal council would have been recalled into question long ago regarding the efficiency of the administration. So you could see this was like an editorial feature in the Tanganyika Standard of 1930, explaining how flood was affecting the city, and the municipal government was likely to carry the blame. Similar scenario occurred also other years later. It was recorded also in newspaper in other years consistently, almost on an annual basis. And in the post-colony, for example, we see the Daily News. Daily News was a state newspaper. And in May 1979, it had a headline which read, "Downpour, throw down Dar into chaos." There are flooded streets, both planned and unplanned, and urban life is disrupted, and the mobility also is disrupted. If you look at the map of Dar es Salaam, you will see that Dar es Salaam is on the eastern coast of Tanzania. It's a small area, spatially, with about 1,400 square kilometers, but it is the most populous place in Tanzania, with 10% of Tanzanian population, with 6 million people, you can imagine. And because it is at the coast of the Indian Ocean, it is also experiencing heavy rains, and it has high temperatures. So it's a geographical space which is in the tropic area, having all features and qualities of a tropical area. Now, a large part of the city is the hills, and this is in the outskirts of the city. But in the core of the city, we have the plains. So water is usually coming from the upland to the lowland. That is what is happening. And so there are two municipal councils of Dar es Salaam city which are facing floods enormously than other places. So we have Ilala Municipal Council, which now is known as Dar es Salaam City Council, but initially it was Ilala Municipal Council. And we also have Kinondoni Municipal Council. These also two municipals are the ones which are forming the oldest parts of the city. So the colonial cities started in these areas. They are also the parts which have many people in the city. So they are the most populous city. They are the most built area. So you can see in one of the images that I'm demonstrating here, one of the streets in Dar es Salaam in 1996. It was faced by floods, and people were just passing somewhere, seeing it as a normal thing. But it is a risk which is affecting their community areas. In May 1979, there was a newspaper which goes by the name of Uhuru. Uhuru refers to freedom. It's a party newspaper. But then the country was under a single party. And as a ruling party newspaper, it was also demonstrating that Dar es Salaam was being faced by floods, to the extent that if you are in the streets of Dar es Salaam, you are like in the rivers. So that's a cartoon which is showing. And then in 2017, there is a newspaper which goes by the name of Mwananchi. It means the citizen. Now there was a cartoon which was satirical and demonstrating that if you want to build a house in Dar es Salaam, then you need to have a standby boat outside your house, because anytime when it rains, expect floods. Spatial management here in Dar es Salaam has not been targeting to control floods, but rather it has been targeting to offer formalization of settlements. And that's the challenge. So perhaps we need to change from the historical understanding. We need to change this urban planning approach. Instead of just offering grid streets and layouts, we need also to have an understanding of the topography of the area, so that we can have planned areas and unplanned areas that are not affected by floods. So the main factor of flooding in Dar es Salaam, it can be said to be rapid population growth. And in rapid population growth, here we have underinvestment of the urban infrastructure because of the ever-rising population. We also have depletion of the natural resources, and here we are talking of wooded lands and empty lands. They are depleted because people are building with the increase of population. And also we have poor solid waste management, and these are leading to the blockage of the little or few existing drainage system. And also we have densification. As many people build, because they are mainly the thick settlements, then they are reducing percolation of water. So densification is also part of the rapid population growth, and in the end it's leading to flooding events. But there are other factors which we need to identify, which are at play as to why we have floods. If you look at history, the designs of the drainage system, they have not been friendly in light to the kind of the soils which are found in Dar es Salaam, as well as to the rainfall levels which are in Dar es Salaam. So there's lack of uniformity. In parts of the city, they have piped drainage system. In parts of the city, they have concrete open drains. In parts of the city, they have dirty drains, which are weathered away by rainwater during the rain season. In other parts of the city, there's no drainage at all. In other places where they have built concrete drains, they are not connected or integrated to the extent that once water falls or enters into the drains, there is no outlet. So floods here is going to be a problem if there is no uniformity in the drainage designs. Also in road building, for a long time since the colonial days, the road building has been targeting the passage for the cars. But what about floods? You need to have roads which are equipped with the proper drainage system. We also have uncontrolled building, and uncontrolled building is occurring in both classes, in lower classes areas and in middle class areas. So in lower classes areas, people are building in the valley lands, some of them, and others are entering into the hazard areas, but they are doing this because of the shortage of housing options. In the upper class areas and middle class areas, they're actually purchasing the swamplands and then filling with refills and then establishing structures and therefore blocking the flow of water to the sea. And what happens is that the areas which were in the past not facing floods, because the swampland was not affected, water is now coming to their areas. And this has been one of the reasons why now uncontrolled building is becoming a problem, not only to the lower class, but also to the upper class areas. But we are also ignoring local geography and history. So there are areas in which the locals of Dar es Salaam, for example, knew that there were flood waterways, but when the urban planners came, they built houses, they surveyed the areas, and then they built the houses without consulting the locals. So this lack of local knowledge or despising local knowledge has led to persistence of floods in those areas. And last has been failure to implement the planning schemes. So Dar es Salaam has the planning scheme, in the first one in 1891, and then the second between 1923 and 1931, the third in 1949, the fourth in 1968, and the fifth in 1979. In all these spatial plans, none of them has been implemented completely, except some parts which were selected. Like those, for example, during the colonial times, those which were considered as European areas. Of course, they were planned very well. Okay. Even the kind of drainage infrastructure that they were implemented, they were very good to reduce the impact of flooding. But in the areas that fell out of the European areas, they were not implemented very well. So failure to implement planning schemes completely and efficiently has also been one of the reasons as to why flooding has persisted. By the way, in 1992, the government realized that it cannot implement a master planning approach anymore here in Tanzania, and therefore they ditched a master planning approach. And then they started planning streets, which they thought they could only offer residential areas to people who could purchase the plots. So the strategy to implement drainage system was ditched away too. Because if you don't have a master plan, how can you develop a comprehensive drainage system in the city? As a policy recommendation, we suggest the following from the historical perspective. First, there should be an integrated knowledge base over the making of floods. So here, we call for disciplines of history, geography, geology, urban planning, hydrology, and philosophy to be consulted so that they could offer the history of the environment and properties of the area in order to control flooding. But we also suggest that there should be a comprehensive drainage system instead of spontaneous and piecemeal drainage system. So this comprehensive will be integrating different parts of the city. And then the third suggestion is that there should be installation of appropriate drainage and ensuring that all places that are lacking drainage now are equipped with drainage. The fourth thing is that there should be urban renewal, especially for places that are affected mainly with flooding. For example, in our workshop and during our research, we visited places like Msisiri. This is an area which has an internal drainage. So the water, the flooding water, once it enters into those areas, does not have an outlet. So if it does not have an outlet, then it remains there for several months. So such kind of areas require urban renewal. And if they require urban renewal, the government should step up to improve the condition by demolishing the houses, leveling the surface, and then constructing fewer structures like story buildings which can accommodate many people instead of single floor houses that are built and packed in the area. And then we suggest change of building designs. The city should now move from building and promoting construction of houses which are basically single floor houses to construction of houses that are story houses, because we need now to build high instead of building horizontally. Building high means that there will be ample. It means that there will be ample spaces for water percolation. There will be open spaces. There will be playgrounds. But building horizontally, it means you're reducing all open lands. You're reducing all places or spaces that you could plant trees that could allow water to seep in the soil. You are also reducing air in circulation in the city. So there is a need to change the building designs here in the city. And the last one is that municipal governments should enforce spatial planning and schemes in all urban areas. And here in the end, I offer you the references that I've used, and I leave you with the questions, perhaps for revision. I ask why, for example, history matters in understanding and explaining flood risk. And then the other question is, why do we need multidisciplinary policy making over flood risk reduction and management? And the last one is, what are the policy recommendations over flood risk reduction and management? Thank you very much for watching this lecture.